Hello, everybody. It's Robert Ohado wearing the hat of intuitive archetypal astrologer for this particular social live. I'm so glad you're here to join me. I've got so much to say. It's also a very special social live because I normally don't do this material outside of my premium membership, but this retrograde is so huge. Like, it's the biggest one of the year. I just felt like I had to pop on and give you all some help. I mean, are you already feeling it or what? So, what exactly is a Mercury retrograde? What does this current one in Libra hold for you? And does it matter if you're not a Libra? I'm going to answer that. What are the major themes that are going on, the major archetypes, the major alchemy you want to be looking out for and get in process with? Like, what's up? We want to look at what are the exact dates that you want to know about. And how do you work with those dates and that timing? What are the three phases of the retrograde? You might not know this, but there's actually three phases to a Mercury retrograde. It's not just when Mercury has gone retrograde, which it already has as of really a day ago. So what are the three phases? How do you work with those? And why is this the biggest retrograde of 2021? Because it really is. And I'm going to explain all that to you. So welcome to this social live. I'm so glad to have you here. Like I said, I usually reserve this material for my Your Intuitive Edge premium members. I do all of my astrology work inside that membership now. And I just want to give a shout out to all of you that the doors open in a couple months. They only open once a year if you want to join for a year and get all that great insight on every cycle and also more. I do little mini courses inside of there as well. Stay tuned. I'm just going to take a minute and say hi to all of you since this is a social live and we're being social. So hello, everyone. Hi. We've got Facebook and we got YouTube live here. And I didn't stream this to Instagram because I'm going to be showing you diagrams and stuff that Instagram doesn't let you do. So this isn't one of the lives where I can actually do Instagram, which I'd love to do. I want to start doing Instagram lives as well. But I'm so glad to have you here. A lot of you know I've been missing in action for a little while just because I had a lot of life events happen to me that were really challenging this year. But things are starting to smooth out, and it's just great to be back. And I've got a lot to share with you. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let me just give a few shout outs to Nick Anderson, one of my peeps in my membership, Robin Simmons. Nice to see you here, Monica. Awesome on Facebook, Dr. Andrea Dinardo on YouTube. I love it. I love that I can stream on both platforms, and it's just so much fun. So. How's everybody doing? Julie Farron. I see you, Julie Farron. Sam. All right, Sam on YouTube. Nice to see all of you. Well, keep the comments coming. I'll maybe do a little, quick Q&A at the end of this. But let's dive in. There's just so much to talk about. So, wow. What are Mercury retrogrades? How do I work with them? A lot of you know I'm an intuitive at heart, and I use it in astrology in a certain way. I call it holocompass astrology to differentiate it from the astrology you may know or associate, as far as like what you know about astrology, what other people do with astrology. Let me tell you why my astrology is different. And in doing so, I'm also just going to lay the tracks down for you to understand what this cycle is all about. Now, astrology for me is not some system in the sky. First of all, it is, created out of the ancients watching planetary movements and watching the synchronicities of that with life events and, energetic movements in culture and society in their own lives. Astrology was born out of that. So in that regard, astrology for me is a tool of synchronicity. It was founded through the psychic law of synchronicity, watching something out there do something, watching something in here happen at the same time or out in our lives happen at the same time, and beginning to make these correlations between, hey, there's this archetypal matrix of life on Earth, and we live in it, right? And it moves through cycles of time. Our lives evolve and develop through cycles of time. And in those cycles, we have patterns. Now I'm going to substitute the word pattern for archetype. And what the ancients did is they mapped out, this is my point of view, the energetic patterned living energy matrix of Earth. So if you could imagine before you're born, you're looking at the world and you're saying, hey, there's a lifetime for me down on planet Earth. And your guides are saying, yeah, that's absolutely true. We got one set up for you. A great fate to destiny journey ahead. You're going to get so much out of this in your soul's evolution. And here's the deal. The Earth has its own patterns. You're going to fuse your soul into them. And when you fuse into those patterns, you're fusing yourself into time and space at the same time. So if you think about this another way, there already were patterns managing reality before you and I showed up here. We just hopped into the mix. And what life becomes is an interesting co-creative dance between the patterns of life that are our fate. This is the fate side. It's just these were here before we came. We're participating in evolution and these patterns, and life moves on. And we, as co-creators, yes, indeed, make co-creative decisions inside of these patterns. That's our destiny. But these patterns are kind of like a set energetic weather, inner weather cycles of the archetypal nature. And what astrology for me is, and how I work with it, and how I came to understand it after thousands of readings, was that it's a tool that helps us see that weather, understand our soul agreements within the cycles of time here, and how to work with them and optimize our potential. All of us have different potential. So my potential is not your potential. It just makes sense, right? And potential is something that's in you that has the inherent capacity of coming into being. Now, let's just pull this into Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrogrades are about an overall collective cycle that's also personal to us, because Mercury is about our minds. But it's also about what in our mental patterning isn't suitable for what we're meant to become next. And a Mercury retrograde draws you into your own personal underworld journey to meet your shadow side, this time in terms of Libra, the Libra shadow side of you, so that you can wake up to some new options, wake up to new empowerment, wake up to new things you need, most notably this time in your relationships. We're all about relationships in this archetype. Now, I've been working with astrology for 30 years. Yes, I'm almost 50, and started when I was 19. And so professionally, I've been working with it for at least 20. And I'm someone that learned from astrologers, and on their shoulders I stand. And then I begin through my own work, the actual intuitive readings of people. I began to understand that the model needed to be reformed a bit for a quantum archetypal co-creative and intuitive age. So I don't work with astrology per se from a causative place where Mercury retrograde, for example, causes anything. I'm going to use causative language because it's more descriptive. But the real reality is it's a synchronicity. We're going to talk today about this cycle that is an energetic fate, an energetic alchemy, and how to work with it. Now, I want you to consider something. There's a lot of astrological superstition that you might believe is fact. Well, I'm going to hopefully dispel some of that. And a lot of that superstition is based in some truth. I'm going to hopefully offer that about Mercury retrograde. But Mercury retrogrades overall are an alchemical process that deals with a complete chaotic disorganization of some part of your psyche that relates to how you think. So this time it's how you think in terms of Libra, that pattern. And let me translate that one more step here. How you think in terms of your value in relationships, what's fair, what's unfair. We're looking at the scales here of Libra, right? How you think in terms of just relationship. And whether that's really something for you that's working, right? And working meaning it's nourishing, it's sustainable, it's reciprocal, it's empowering you in some way. So what this retrograde brings up is themes around these arenas of life that are drenched in relationship. Now, that's a huge thing to say because basically, one could say this is your whole life. Life is nothing but relationship. We're in relationship to everything around us. You're in relationship to me right now. You're in relationship to your whole entire environment in some way. You're in relationship, of course, to your friends, your family, your loved ones, your spouse, your partners, whatever. Those are the obvious relationship containers that you probably could readily go, yeah, I have a relationship, or I relate this way to this person or to my pet or whatever. But in truth, we have a relationship to every single thing. So the archetype of relationship itself is massive. So now I'm kind of inching toward why this is such a big retrograde, because when we get into just that alone, how do you relate? On the other side of that is a fundamental question I want you to use as almost an intuitive guide in this retrograde, and it's this: who is in your life and why? Now, there's a lot in that question. From the point of view, let's riff for a minute. Like, yeah, why is someone in my life? Why did I bring them in? Did I track them in? Why is someone not in my life? Why does it seem like I maybe repel them away? What is it about my energetics and magnetics that both attracts and repels people? Is there something to the truth that like attracts like? What about opposites attracting? Where does that fit into this whole organization of magnetics when it comes to my relationships? What does intimacy mean to me? How do I arrive at decisions? How do I make decisions that honor my value and my own holism? Do I make decisions that honor the holism of other people? See how big this is? Now, to frame this in the meta alchemy of our times is essential, because every astrology cycle isn't just like sitting there on its own. It's in relationship to all the other cycles going on right now. So I have to bring into the fold a few cycles and put them on the map so you understand that this particular Mercury retrograde in Libra is very specifically in relationship to and offering messages from other larger alchemical astrological cycles in play. Let me get mythological to frame this for you. In mythology, which is where our this is Western astrology, this is tropical astrology, just to be clear. In our Western astrological model, we don't speak about things outside of the Greco-Roman pantheon of gods and goddesses in terms of our astrology. That's where our astrological model was born out of. Now, that was born out of a lot of stuff historically that I'm not going to get into, which I totally couldn't become Professor Ohado in front of you, right in front of your eyes. But what you want to understand is that who was Hermes? Who was Mercury to the gods? He was the messenger. So he was the one god that could go from Olympus after a chat with Zeus or Jupiter and zoom right down to Hades and chat with Pluto. And then come up again and go talk to Chiron or go talk to Aphrodite Venus. Or Hermes was the one and only god that could go all around and communicate, give messages. Now, there's a trickster side to Hermes Mercury, and I'm going to talk about that in terms of Mercury retrograde shortly. But what I want you to grasp for now is that mapping of this archetype is absolutely accurate, and it plays out powerfully in every Mercury retrograde. In every Mercury retrograde, Mercury is giving a message on behalf of the larger matrix of life and the creative forces in play. Just like he would in mythology give messages on behalf of other gods. Now just translate those gods are creative archetypal forces alive and well in our psychic field, co-creating our lives, shaping fate and destiny. So in a retrograde, it's as if, and it really is as, not just as if, Hermes says, listen, I've got to pause you out in the Libra part of your life because your greater potential, the forces of your greater potential and the greater potential of all of life, there's a message of grace here. It's alchemical, which means it's going to require transformation. But I've got to pause out your usual patterns, your usual ways of thinking, your usual ways of deciding. Choice is a huge Libra issue in its pattern. I got to pause you out because what you're doing now is not tenable to what you agreed to become in this lifetime. This will shut your potential down if you keep going in this direction. Now, these are very big sort of pillars to lay down, but I want you to begin locating yourself in everything I say. And I'm going to drill down into some specific themes shortly here for a little bit. But I want you to start to go, okay, gotcha, Ohado. We're in this cycle of time right now, and I'm going to give you specific dates. Don't worry, I got you. But I want to lay the framework down of what a Mercury retrograde is. These happen every 3.5 months-ish, and they usually last for about 21, sometimes 22 days, sometimes just 20. And that's just the retrograde itself, but that's not all that is going on in a retrograde alchemy. First, you have what's called the setup phase, and that began on September 6th. Now, I think it's probably easiest for me to actually language this to you by simply showing you a bit of a graph that gives you some specific dates. I'm going to walk through this real quick with you so that you actually kind of get it a bit better, and you can see actual dates while I explain this to you right now. So here we go. This is the overview of the dates of the Mercury retrograde. Now, I'm going to get into the content, the alchemy, the themes in a second here, and I'm not going to cover all of them. I covered a ton of them in my membership, but I'm just going to give you a little sample. The setup phase begins September 6th. That's because that's when Mercury hit the degree it's going to retrograde all the way back to. Now, you can see in this graph, there's like this little snake, this little purple kind of snake, and Mercury's right there. That's 10 degrees Libra. That's where it hit. It goes all the way up to basically 25, 25.5, 26 degrees-ish Libra. That's where it is right now. Then it heads backward toward where the retrograde zone set up. So let me just break this down. From September 6th until now, I want you to look at your life and go, what's been a theme that's been coming up? Now, here's what you want to do in terms of that theme. I want you to think about the stuff that's been a bit triggering. Every Mercury retrograde is about an unconscious shadow process, which means through the cycle itself, you are destined, if you align, you don't have to, you can fight this, and I'll tell you what happens if you do. But you're destined to journey into your interior and become aware of some things. That's the retrograde. I want you to think of retrograde now as a journey into the unconscious. We're going to go backward for a minute. We're going to reassess. We're going to reevaluate. We're going to go back into what we didn't see while we were moving forward in our relationships, in the Libran part of our lives, in our sense of equality in life and equanimity with people, in our sense of love and reciprocity. I got to go back. And now, from September 6th to now, this is where you want to start intuitively looking at, hey, what was activating up in my life or is right now that if I get symbolic, I can see it's a theme. I got a theme of, I'm going to riff around here on a few themes I've seen lately in people. I've got a theme where I've got to finally face that someone doesn't reciprocate me. I've got a theme where I've got to finally face that I have my boundaries violated all the time. Someone doesn't treat me as their equal. I've got a theme where, and some of these themes, they could be generations in the making. They could be as big as coming from your own family line or culture itself. Because every Mercury retrograde is typically countercultural. It's a deprogramming of the conditioned mind and self in the Libran archetype this time. Now, this gets holographic. So there's innumerable ways this might be showing up, but what you will notice if you slow down, and I suggest you get Zen, and you go, wait a minute, I got to get symbolic. I got to get out of the personal for just a second. It feels very personal, but I got to hop out of that. And I got to ask myself, what the F is going on here? Why do I keep having issues with bullies? My victim is screeching in me. What's up? My victim's on full trigger. And I'm feeling like I'm being victimized by this situation or that situation. And the way that you know it's a theme is that it starts to show up in many different arenas. So going to your life right now, and as you continue to absorb the content from this video, begin to sense for yourself what is activated. And then try to name it through patterns. So, what's activated? I'm finally being forced through, maybe perhaps some circumstances, some fate, to face the vampires that I have in my life, or the narcissists, or that I'm one, or that I continually to constantly go after people who are not emotionally available. Why? Who's in my life and why? That is the question of a co-creator. That is the question of someone who says, I want to know that answer so that I can start creating my relationship magnetics consciously. Because you're always in some sort of activated relationship magnetics with life. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's just going to keep doing what it does until you learn to, if you will, master certain laws and principles of magnetics. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. For now, we're in the journey of the setup phase, which started on September 6th. Let's get back to the diagram here. Now, Mercury stationed retrograde, depending on where you are in the world, there could be a day difference here. On September 26th at 26 degrees Libra. So we're in retrograde now. It is moving backward. And it's moving toward a very specific, important date, October 9th, and that is the midpoint of this cycle. Now, what the midpoint is, it's when Mercury lines up with the sun in the sky. And I want you to image this because it's accurate. The sun is about illumination, revelation, right? It's the reason why we're all alive. It is light. It is life. So in this instance, it's also your higher wisdom, if you will, your deeper self, if you want to go deep. If it's your intuitive self that knows, it's your knowing, it's your potential, it's your soul. And I want you to image, here's Mercury, your mind, and here's the sun coming back to align. And at that exact moment, October 9th, there's this sense all through the process up to that of through your underworld journey, finally coming to, if you will, the midnight of your dark night. And at the midnight of our dark nights, we usually tilt toward the dawn afterward because we've become conscious of something. Something's been revealed. And that's what a midpoint of a Mercury retrograde is. And I like to look at it from the point of view that in our Mercury retrogrades, we get Mercury retrograde messages. And that's where we start to, as alchemists, as co-creators, look at our lives and go, what themes are going on? Where's my power and powerlessness in these themes? Meaning, where do I have power to change stuff? Where don't I? And if I don't have power, how do I want to relate to that? What are my optimal choices in the zone of powerlessness in my life? What are the optimal choices in my zones of power? Where am I confused? I'm in a power and powerlessness mix-up. I don't actually know where I have power, where I don't. By the time you get to the mid-cycle of a Mercury retrograde, the midpoint, this time October 9th, usually you're pretty aware of the theme, the alchemy, the main thing that's up for transformation. Now, I want to pause the dates here for a minute and weave in a bigger meta alchemy, and that is this. We are this year in the activations of Jupiter in Aquarius and Saturn in Aquarius. And I don't know if you all remember back on December 21st, 2020, we had that great conjunction of both of them in the sky, which really framed an energetic that's going to be very much guiding our collective journey for quite some time. And most notably this year. Well, Jupiter stations direct inside of this Mercury retrograde, and so does Saturn. That to me is really, really powerful. It makes a statement. It says this: all that you've been working out in your relationships, and it's a very interesting time to talk about relationship, isn't it? Because we're in the midst of a pandemic, which has shaken apart most of our relationships and relationship patterns for sure. At first, we couldn't even go anywhere in lockdowns. And then it became, for some of us, warring with our own neighbors over all sorts of things, masks, vaccines, what's true, what's not. We're in a very interesting time, and that's a euphemism, really, regarding how we relate to each other, aren't we? But we're in a very Aquarian time. And the Aquarian pattern is the dominant pattern alive in the psychic field and in ascendancy in the psychic field of Earth. In astrological terms, we say, hey, we're heading into the age of Aquarius. But what does that actually mean? Well, astrology is what you live. So it means, hey, we're living in a time where we are being pressured into one world consciousness, which means this. We all, in our lifetimes and beyond our lifetimes, are being pressured on how to relate to life, to each other, from a one world point of view. Meaning, hey, we're all interconnected. We interbe. What one country does to their environment affects the whole globe because we share an atmosphere. What one country's economy does could possibly affect the whole globe because we're in a global economy. What one country's pandemic creates fractals out to everybody else. It pulses everywhere into the world because we have air travel. And if you have a virus, it's going everywhere. So when China has a virus, the rest of the world's going to have it before long. These are the growing pains of becoming one world consciously. Now, we've always been one world, but we weren't always conscious about it. It's only been the last 100 years, really, where we've really been maturing into, hey, we're one world. We have world wars now. So when you think about that as the main pressure of our growth, all humans are under this pressure. Now we get into the micro of our personal journeys with that bigger truth. And then we now look at Mercury retrograde in Libra right now. And Mercury is messenger on behalf of that dynamic, is saying, listen, you've got to go in yourself and understand in a very intuitive, technical, and deep way what drives your relationship magnetics, your relationships. Who's in your life and why? Where are you at in your spirituality when it comes to how you relate to what it means to be compassionate or kind or a love rebel or stand up for yourself or have boundaries? So funneling in from the bigger atmosphere of things here into this personal zone of your Mercury retrograde, my Mercury retrograde, we are being tasked to become skillful in how we relate to each other. So let me just riff around here. Do you relate to other people as equals? Get real and tell truths. Do other people relate to you as their equal? How do you know they do or don't? What gives you that data, that sense of, no, actually, Robert, they don't? And I said, well, how do you know that? Well, they violate my boundaries. They expect me to continually overgive to them. They don't consider me. Go down your list, and you may be very accurate. So my question back to you as a co-creator is, okay, well, what do you want to do about that? Where's your power? Where's your powerlessness? And do you understand that this is archetypal? You have archetypes in you, i.e. patterns of relationship that are matches for the vampire, the narcissist, the addict, and other people. You can't control their archetypal forces. You can control yours, and whether you match with them, you in. Because it's going to be a dark night journey to get from one interior pattern in you to another. And it requires an understanding of your esteem system, the 6 laws of archetypal attraction, the 6 mystical laws of archetypal attraction. There's so much you're going to need to know. So in this Mercury retrograde, there's a focus in these zones. Now, if you don't listen to the Mercury retrograde's promptings or nudges, which is like saying this, just substitute this. If I don't listen to my soul, And it's desire to reorganize, reevaluate, reboot, reform my relationships. And that means your relationship first and foremost to you. If I don't listen to that, well, guess what? I just activated the trickster side of Mercury. So in Mercury retrogrades, we've often heard stereotypal, superstitious stuff like, well, be careful, your electronics will crash, or don't make big decisions and don't make plans during the retrograde and all this stuff. Now, there's truth and there's fiction in here. So let me sort this out real quick and then also get you in the know on how the trickster gets activated. The trickster gets activated when you will not directly engage with an inner truth. Your wounded ego is too strong. It can't come into a direct rapport with your inner truth. So if your inner truth were to tell you, listen, this relationship you're in, its expiration date's coming up because you're meant to evolve into something more. And this person is not scheduled for that. It's just that simple. Could you be that technically neutral about hearing that guidance? Most of us can't, because that's really personal. But if we can't get to some place where we can hear directly without our biases, our wants, our low esteem, our filters, filtering truth, which we all as human beings will do, well, the trickster comes along and says, look, all right, the only way I'm going to get you to hear and acknowledge and have a direct rapport with this truth is I got to trick you into it. My tricking you into it is an act of grace. And it's going to feel like a frustrating, perhaps even betrayal. But trust, I got you. I'm doing this on behalf of what you're meant to become. I'm doing this on behalf of your higher potential. And on behalf of the real truth that you're miserable in this relationship or this relationship dynamic. So, here we go. Now, the reason why I oftentimes and do offer in my membership these astrology modules where I guide people through these dynamics is because you do not have to subjugate yourself to a real rough and tumble with the trickster. You can mitigate this greatly if you understand how the alchemy and dynamics work in a Mercury retrograde. There's a way to flow through this. It doesn't mean it's just a piece of cake. Going inside deep and realizing that you're on a schedule to shift into some new, let's say, way of relating through a new archetype in you, while on one level could be exciting and adventurous and open you up to such incredible new relationship dynamics, but on another level, it's completely the unknown. And one of the things I've learned about all of us human beings is that we will sabotage like nothing else to avoid the unknown. I'd rather stay in my dysfunctional relationship patterns than go anywhere near the unknown. So even though I know this isn't working, I know it. And I have a lot more comfort in the knowing than the unknown. So my relationship with the unknown ain't healthy. And what's true is I'm going to continue to, offer my neck up for the vampire because it's what I know. I get value from it. They need my blood. They need me. That means I mean something to them. And that gives my low esteem some kind of boost. So here you go. And we all are, some orb of that example in other relationship arenas and dynamics in our lives. People will stay in jobs for Lord knows how long that they cannot stand. Partly because of probably financial security, but also because they don't know what's next after that. How I leave that job? No. So the trickster comes online when you're not in a healthy relationship with, yes, the unknown, as a necessity for growth. Everything new in your life comes from the unknown. Your potential exists in the unknown of you. Your magic exists in the unknown of you. Your next miracle exists in the unknown of your life. So this is something in every retrograde we have to evaluate, like, hey, what's my relationship like with the unknown? And is there a trickster and energetic around me? And so what that looks like when the trickery gets going in a Mercury retrograde is, yeah, it can be, spirit decides to mess up with your electronics. That frequency of electronics is the closest to the frequency of spirit, and that's where they're most able to manipulate things in your life. Why? Just to mess with you? No. This is why. To get your wounded ego mind to get out of the way, take a back seat, and let your soul rise up. Now, for example, if your computer drive crashes, or you lose a cell phone, or lose your wallet or purse, or something like that, very Mercury retrograde-ish, what happens? You get tied up in managing that for a while. Your ego mind gets tied up in a different focus. And all the while, heaven's doing its magic over here to start shifting and changing your life. So when you end up in frustrating dynamics, electronics, losing something, miscommunication, missing flights, it's not just a superstition as to why that might be happening. It's a technical trickster dynamic. And the trickster will use whatever works, by the way. It doesn't just have to be, some sort of electronics going south. It can be many other things too. Like you start dating someone and you think they present as if they're somebody, and you find out they're actually not that person at all. It was all a mask. But that tricks you into your attractor drivers. In terms of, I got to look at why I'm attracted toward someone who's deceitful, because some deeper part of me knew this was all a show. But I didn't want to hear that. Why? Now, if you're feeling, I can feel the energetics of the trickster in my life now, because I know this energy very well. I know the cycle. I know how it works very well, like a technician, really. So I can feel when it's in the hood. If you find yourself in this retrograde getting frustrated, or feeling like stifled or blocked, or do have like mishaps going on, I want you to hear me in your head say, listen, you can focus on that. Or you can go, I maybe need to slow down. I need to tune into what my Mercury retrograde messages are and realize this. Those messages are coming from beyond my comfort zone. So whatever those messages are, they're inconvenient and uncomfortable. All right, let's do some work on getting comfortable with the unknown and the messages from beyond, the messages from my potential. Now, let's dive into some Libran dynamics, and let me just set the stage of Libra, because this all centers around Libra this time, the archetype of Libra. And as I just mentioned, in the context of an Aquarian one world evolutionary mandate that we're all under on this planet, and that will be here long beyond our lifetimes. But Libra represents your soul contract relationships, the soul agreements you have with people that are major league. Libra represents meeting the other as a mirror of yourself. And that's super, super important when it comes to like shadow work, or looking at how someone's mirroring back to you, perhaps something inside of you that you're not really in harmony with or aware of, that you need to become aware of and introject back and do some work on. Libra represents your relationship archetypes and magnetics. And every relationship you have is under this umbrella. And it is really more of the personal variety, but we can also have relationships with groups, with tribes, with our political parties, with our, there's so many ways we relate now, right? Libra is about equality, karmic balance. It's about karmic entanglements, something I might touch on lightly. Justice, your personal values and choices, something I do want to touch on, and your archetypal matches, something I want to touch on, compatibility, and a lot more. The thing is that Libra encompasses all these themes and more. And I will tell you, I will not get to everybody's theme here. I'm giving you the main structure so you can locate yourself as best you can. Hopefully find this helpful. Now, what this comes down to, because we are in the territory of the mind, and this is a Mercury retrograde, is that this is about, it's a celestial instruction. Think of it this way, that the time has come for you to begin to understand that you live your life in a Libran box of some kind. And we're going to call that box this conditioned Libran part of your mind. Now, we oftentimes will hear, think outside the box. And that's actually an oxymoron because you don't really ever think outside the box. So I want you to think about something. Anytime that you've had an aha, or you've had a breakthrough insight, or some powerful shift in your thinking, did you think yourself into that insight or that aha? No. What happened was your intuitive signals got into the box of your mind and got a truth in. And then that reorganizes the box itself. The box is forever your mind. So you don't think outside your mind any more than you think outside the box, because the box is your mind. And in a Mercury retrograde, it's really coming into an alignment with that truth. Like, look, the box is my mind. What I need is messages outside the box to get into the box and then recalibrate my mind. Yeah. And that's exactly what the intention of this retrograde is all about. So when we look at this from the point of view of how do we arrive at our minds, our boxes, we've got to include, hey, culture gave us a way to think about things. Our family gave us a way to think about things. Us, just society at large gave us a way to think about things. And now let's use a metric to understand our boxes. Do I think about things in a way that's holistic, that's truthful, that's in a direct rapport with truth? Or do I think about things in a way that is sort of insulated and shut in per my conditioning from my family, my culture, and society? A retrograde is going to be on your butt about that. How are you thinking about things? Because holism itself is bigger than just the mind. In reality, the mind is actually not that powerful as a creative force in you. And it's been very, I would say, misempowered. Certainly in my field of spirituality and self-help, you'll hear, change your thoughts, change your mind. I'm going to tell you that's not accurate. It's change your patterns, change your life. Not change your thoughts, change your life. In fact, it's your patterns that generate your mental sets. So one of the things that might be going on in this retrograde for you is the necessity to engage a lot of thought reversal. The way you thought about someone or your relationships or a dynamic in your relationships needs to reverse. It's not accurate in terms of the co-creative power dynamics or what's really going on, or fill in your blank. Now, one of the things that I think will be coming up, because this is a huge Libran theme, is how do you relate to your own set of inner values? What are your values, by the way? And this is where right now we can see a lot of conflict and frankly, hypocrisy, is that a lot of people will say, I value this, but then they do something completely different. I value this, but then they decide something very different outside of those values. So when you ask yourself, what are my values? What do I value and why? That's a deep question. And it's going to take you once again into your patterning from culture and society. Society and culture, for example, will tell you, hey, monogamy is the only value for relationships that should be honored, instituted, and active. But is that true? I don't know about you, but I know lots of people that do not live in monogamous setups and relationships, and they have wonderful intimacy. And I know people that don't. But I know a lot of people that are monogamous and they have horrific intimacy on every level of the relationship, or they cheat on each other. What's it that makes us think that monogamy, for example, I'm just using one to show programming from culture and society, what makes us think that that is the gold standard? Who told us that? Is it true? Now, it could totally be true for you. And it might not be. And we don't know until we question, well, why do I value something the way I do? And out of that, what choices do I make? Now, there's this superstitious stereotype, just more of a stereotype in Libra, that Libra is just indecisive. They're always weighing the options and they can't decide. That's not exactly accurate. What's more accurate is in the Libra path of development, learning to make decisions from your values is crucial. And the person who knows their values very clearly makes decisions like that. The person who's figuring out, what do I value? I don't know. What should I do? Is this what I value? They're the ones that take a while to arrive at a choice. And neither path is right or wrong. I'm just making a point that when you're really clear on your values, choices become clear as well. And are your values arising out of your worth or your wounds? Most of us, if we're honest, make decisions that are about chasing our value instead of decisions that express our value. So if I'm making decisions to get to my value, every decision I make in my relationships and in my life is always going to have that calculus. Will this make me enough? Will this choice make me enough? Will this action make me enough? Will I get to enough over here? Now I want you to take that calculus and that intentionality and drive and just evaluate your own life and evaluate this. How toxic and dark can that motivation go? If someone's making decisions driven from worthlessness, i.e., I make decisions to get me to being enough. It's those sort of decisions, I think, that create some of the darkest things in the world. Versus someone who, hey, I'm enough. And I know I'm a messed up human being, just like everybody else. I'm not above anybody. I'm equal to everybody. I have this sense of I call it soul esteem. I'm enough just because I am alive. And I make decisions from enough. I make decisions that express, I actually already feel I'm enough. So I'm then afforded, empowered to make decisions that are connecting, healing, that empower others with a sense that they're also enough. I don't make decisions from competition or jealousy or vengeance because I'm enough. This life isn't about getting to be enough. Enoughness came baked in with my first breath. Where are you at in that? And when you start to evaluate your relationships from that metric, that lens, and the decisions you make in your life, that's a real hardcore, beautiful, spiritually mature way to do an inventory with yourself. Not to make yourself wrong. This is to locate your GPS of values and know that what you choose has karmic consequence. And that's not a punishment system, it's technical. When we choose certain things, there's a karma for that. And it goes from good karma to all the way across the board. So choosing from worth or wounds, and maybe more accurately, the esteem that you arrived at for yourself out of some of the wounding you've been through, which is a place you need to really hug in and give a lot of love. But take that to your relationships. What are you choosing? From what? Now, I want to sort of wind this down, take a little drink of something here, check in with you all. You guys tracking with me, everybody? We're going to wind this down with archetypal matches, and I want to also tell you about something really cool I'm doing starting next Tuesday that you might be interested in. Who's feeling me? Let me look at the questions for a second here while I take a little pause break. I covered a lot of this a week ago in my membership, and we went even deeper. So keep in mind that membership opens up in a couple months. You'll even be able to listen to that session on demand inside the library if you want to join. So, but it just keep you all in the loop. Pamela Lond, how are you? Tracking. Richard Copeland's tracking. I like it. All right. Peggy Vogt aus Deutschland. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining me. And let me bring some more here. And these are just, once again, these are just broader things to consider in your retrograde process. Now, I'm going to take you back to the stats real quick and then kind of weave that back in to everything I've already said and then continue forward from here. So when we come back to the stats here, everything I just said and what's coming next will be very important, certainly all through the retrograde process and alchemy itself, all 3 phases. So you have the setup phase, starts on September 26th. We're now in the retrograde phase, which started September 26th. And we reach the midpoint of the retrograde phase, October 9th. And then Mercury will station direct October 18th. Now, from October 18th through November 2nd, you've got 3 planets in direct motion now that have stationed direct during the retrograde. You've got Jupiter in Aquarius, Saturn in Aquarius, and now you have Mercury in Libra. So from October 18th through November 2nd, look alive. This is why. It's called the integration phase. Sometimes, and I've definitely experienced this, the integration phase is actually the hardest part of the retrograde, not the retrograde itself. Retrograde's about becoming awake, getting conscious of a lot of the things I'm talking about in this arena, right? But when Mercury goes direct again, on October 18th through November 2nd, it's during that time we got to take what we just woke up to. And now we got to go redo our lives. We have to take it to the streets of our lives. Awareness isn't just enough itself. You have to actually do something with it. And it's in the doing something with what we know that things can get hard. So you might find from October 18th through November 2nd, like, wow, this is actually, all the themes. Yeah, got it, Ohado. I got my messages down. And this is just continuing into this really hard mountain climb of actually changing my life now. Yeah, absolutely. Especially because it's the finishing of 3 retrogrades and all of that alchemy and that awakening during that time being pressured into actual action and transformation. So the retrogrades themselves typically bring awareness. The integration phase brings application of that awareness into choice action. And that can be rough. It can be rough going. So if you're feeling that when it comes up, it's okay. And there's two prominent lunations going on during this, by the way. There's a new moon and full moon. I'm not going to cover that. But just FYI, you might want to, get in the know on some of that as well, as far as other forces that just make statements in energetic, I call them meridian pricks, with like an archetypal acupuncture needle during those times that help the flow of this all happen more. Those are what those lunations for me, new moon, full moon, represent. Now, archetypal matches, relationship magnetics, self-esteem, and the power of choice. These are all super huge pieces to understand in yourself right now. So when you look at your relationships, I'm going to give you some counsel here. And it's part of getting to the symbolic mind where the power in alchemy is, the shift can happen. First, you want to look at yourself. And when it comes to archetypes, that might be a big word for you. You might not have heard it before. Maybe you're fluent with that word. I'm not sure. But let me just create a level playing field for everybody here. That word basically is about what patterns of behavior do I primarily create my life through? What patterns of perception? What patterns of choice? What patterns of action do I create my life through? So if you're someone who's very mothering, well, I would say you have a strong mother archetype. You have this inner pattern in you that seeks to nurture, perhaps comfort, nourish others. Now, let's bring in a little rough and tumble one. Let's say you're someone who is very empathic. I'm going to say this is the victimized empath. So empathic that you absorb energies from people and it feels heavy, overwhelming, and completely throws you out of your center. Well, that's a certain pattern of how your system operates with empathy. And oftentimes what comes out of that is the sense of being victimized. And that's why I call it the victimized empath, because now it becomes some sort of identity for you. Like, I'm just so sensitive, I can't handle life, other people, big crowds. Now those can be actual technical truths about the sensitivity of your system, but that's different than now that's my identity. So when it comes to these pieces around your relationship archetypes, what patterns do you primarily relate through? So do you relate through a codependent with people? Do you relate through a scapegoat? Are you constantly absorbing shadow projections from other people and they're always making you wrong for stuff they do? What's that about? Why do I keep bringing that in? That's where we get to our magnetics. Now, it's popular for lots of us to kind of roll around in the idea that our minds and our mind's capacity to be positive or negative are running the show. And I want to tell you, technically, from all the readings I've done, that's just not accurate. You do not attract at the level of mind who's in your life. You attract at the level of pattern. And oftentimes it's the archetypes, the patterns in you that generate your thoughts, whether that's positive, negative, or really just neutral. But your thoughts do not generate your archetypes. It doesn't work that way. That is not how your co-creative train is structured. So when I say, hey, it's time for you to reevaluate your relationship magnetics and understand the mystical laws that govern archetypal attraction, that's what I'm talking about. So all we typically hear also, because it's convenient for the mind, and if you will, a bit of a bypass move to just get people in our life that we, with our wounded egos, decide we want, is we hear how, like attracts like, and that's it. That's the only law. Well, what about opposites attracting? What about the reality that you actually can have a certain archetype in you that has a magnetic that repels other people out of your life? So if I'm someone who has the unrequited lover, and I've seen this very common in people in my readings, and that pattern is wired to be attracted to people who are not available, whether that's emotionally, they're locationally not available, they're married. The unrequited lover in someone goes after, as an attraction, someone who's not available for them. And there's a very interesting, deeper reason that I've read in people as to why that's there. It's a survival archetype of adaptation for one. It's to help them survive, because if I go after, I'm an unrequited lover, let's say, and let's say I have that pattern, and that's how I relate to people in dating and perhaps just my romantic, entanglements. Well, that person that I'm going after is never really present to abandon me because they're not available. For whatever reason, they're age inappropriate, they're emotionally, psychologically not mature enough to really be there for me as an equal. They're, like I said, they're locationally not around, they're emotionally unavailable, fill in your blanks, they're married. Well, if I'm drawn to them, and here's what you want to do. I'm saying this as an example, fill in your own pattern. Not only does that pattern attract me toward the unavailable, unrequiting lover in someone else, there's the match. It also repels away the reciprocal present lover. That person cannot magnetically enter my field. In fact, if they came to the door of my house, as soon as I opened the door, my magnetics would push them all the way off my property. And that's to say, when we look at our magnetics, that's just 2 laws, of which there are 6. We have matches. And the way that you change that, well, I'm doing a whole entire course on it. And that's what I want to share with you just now. So if you're interested in everything I just said, if that speaks to you, and this is very perfect timing, I start October 5th. I'm doing this as a guest teacher on mace.com. My dear friend Carolyn Mace has invited me back. She heard about this idea. I talked to her about it. We talk all the time. And she's like, could you please teach that on my website? Of course, I said yes. And it's this course. Archetypes and the Magnetics of Relationships. It's 8 lessons, and I'm going to go into all 6 laws of archetypal attraction and guide you through everything you need to know to change. It's perfect for this retrograde. Your archetypal matches, your relationship magnetics. We're going to look at yours. Go to her website. I'll put a link in so that you can go. It's already on the homepage of her website, mace.com, MYSS.com, if you're interested. We start next Tuesday. Lessons are live and then on demand afterward. And that goes all through October, 8 lessons. I do hope you'll consider joining me there because it's brand new, powerful material. Absolutely perfect for this retrograde. Let me just finish with a few more thoughts on this, though. Matches are dynamic. And one of the things that you will likely be evaluating are what yours are. First, you got to know your own archetypes, at least a little. And my simplest way for you to assess that is to say, listen, do an inventory of your patterns. So if you're someone who's constantly engaging in the pattern of perfectionism, well, guess what? I'm going to tell you, you have the perfectionist archetype. If you're someone who is a procrastinator, all right, there's your procrastinator archetype. If you're someone who's an athlete, well, there's your athlete archetype. If you're someone who loves cooking, well, hello, my dear chef archetype. If you're someone who is really focused on romance, love, dating and relating, well, hello, my lover archetype. And it goes all over. You know, let me give you some of mine. I'm a teacher. I have a very strong teacher archetype. It pretty much owns my whole life. I'm also very empathic. So I do have that empathic soul archetype as well. You might be someone who is a shadow rescuer. You just can't help but rescue people. Even though maybe it crashes out your resources and you don't get appreciated for it. And yet there's still the next rescue mission. What in you drives those magnetics? Why do you attract projects to rescue? What is that? Who is in your life and why? And what can you do about it? And because we talked about how we repel people, who's not in your life and why not? Maybe you'd love to have a certain type of person come into your life or a certain kind of dynamic in relationships you're already in activate. Well, if you don't understand the archetypal magnetics here, I don't think that's happening. So I'm super excited about that course, but you want to look at shadow dancing. And that's when we are engaging in the shadow, matching with other people on that sort of dance floor. And inside of shadow dancing, often we are also called to evaluate what I call karmic entanglements. Why do we end up unable to leave a certain match with someone? We can't get off that dance floor. What is it that keeps us stuck there? What magnetics are going on there? They're karmic. And that's when we get into things that are major league and that are oftentimes part of our lifetime magnetics that need to change. So if you're interested, join me in that course. Now, I'll be speaking, however, a little bit more about the archetypal truth about attraction later this week as well. And you can join me for that live as well if you'd like. But let me just finish this out with the stats, give you some follow-up thoughts and guidance. And I hope to see you next week inside of mace.com's course and certainly anywhere else I'm going to be talking. But coming back to the stats here, we have got all these things going down on this timeline. And I will tell you, I really mean this. And I mean, yeah, I'm always thinking Mercury retrogrades are a big deal, but this is a big one. It's big. One of the ways that you can actually really start to see just how big and what it means is by looking to what's happening in the headlines. You know, so what's happening in the headlines as we look at relationships between countries, relationships between political parties, relationships between, you know, different tribes. I want you to see that now with what I just gave you as symbolic coordinates. And what that can help you do is locate in yourself whether these archetypes, and these are Libra archetypes, are in play. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of the, you know, Libran archetypes, just a little bit to get us in the mix. But if you see some of these archetypes coming up in your life as part of themes, then I'm going to say, all right, you're getting really clear on perhaps your messages and the things that need to shift in you. But once again, this is not the full list. I actually gave you tons of them. I would say this actually in closing. Any archetypes that are involved in your relationship dynamics that you primarily relate from, and these could be survival adaptations from childhood that you just have not neutralized and sort of replaced with something else yet. The bigger question is, all right, what are the magnetics of this? Why do I keep magnetically repelling and drawing people in? And remember, it's not just like attracts like, it's also opposites attract, something I'm going to drill down on inside the MACE course. You want to look at this stuff in a very radical, revolutionary new way. Retrogrades are about going into a zone you don't know, or and looking at things, remember, outside of the box of your mind, perhaps for the first time, outside of that box. And that means you got to kind of borrow your soul's eyes for a minute, not your conditioned personality, and you got to start looking around. If you can do that, well, I think you're going to have a much smoother retrograde, and you're going to get a lot more traction in the new of your life, and you're certainly going to mitigate the trickster. So I hope you found this helpful. I can't wait to read all your comments. I'll be posting a link to the MACE course right after I get done here, both on channels, my YouTube channel, as well as the Facebook page. And if you just want to go to my website, ohado.com, the course for MACE is up right there. Stay tuned, get on my newsletter. I will be doing more around and just on my social media. Like, subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you follow me on Facebook, on Instagram. And I'll be putting posts up day to day about new stuff I'm going to be doing on all these themes. I've got more to say, and I want to make sure you're in the know. So let me know what's going on with you. Leave it in the comments below. Tell me how your retrograde's already going. We're in the very beginning of this with a few more weeks ahead. And don't forget, the integration phase doesn't even finish until November 2nd. So buckle in, get zen. Join me in the MACE course. I have you 100% there. Brand new stuff. Go read the description of the course at the very least and see if it speaks to you. All right. Lots of love. Happy Mercury retrograde. Namaste.